You have the treasury companies in Japan also going full steam ahead on acquiring Bitcoin. And that makes it difficult for the government to ignore Bitcoin because Metaplanet is one of the most traded stocks on the Japanese stock exchange. You cannot say Bitcoin is not important because it definitely is, and it's staring you right in the face. You combine that with the necessity of Bitcoin for all the other reasons we talked about. I think it's just a matter of time that it kicks over, and then you see a shift in priorities and a shift in execution. So I think if everyone thinks we're going to go lower this year, we're probably going to end up higher. And there's a lot of signs that point to us going higher because we've never had this kind of a bearish market where a major accumulator like Strategy is taking multiples of daily mine supply off the market every week. Like their preferred shares, STRC in particular, it's working perfectly. It's letting them accumulate in a bear market and lowering their average cost.
So why isn't every government jumping into Bitcoin already? Because real change takes time. Samson Mow compares it to trying to convince someone close to you to adopt Bitcoin. It doesn't happen overnight. Many politicians are busy, distracted, or don't fully understand things like inflation or the financial systems they're running. That's why progress isn't the same everywhere. Some countries are moving quickly while others are far behind. But once a major country fully commits, everything could shift. Bitcoin is competitive by nature. If one nation gains an advantage, others won't want to be left behind, so they'll feel pressure to catch up. Mow also highlights an important debate about Bitcoin's future. Should it become more advanced and complex, or stay simple and secure? He strongly believes in keeping Bitcoin simple, arguing that its strength comes from being reliable and easy to trust. Now let's hear what he about to say. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more content like this.
Convincing governments to do anything new is pretty difficult.
That's an understatement. So people are really curious like what it means to work with governments, and it's almost the same as trying to convince your neighbor to adopt Bitcoin. They have a certain level or negative understanding of Bitcoin if they have some preconceived prejudices against it, and they're not interested in Bitcoin, sound money, hard money, inflation even. They know about inflation, but they don't know what causes it, or they choose not to know. But you have to go and talk to them about Bitcoin, try to educate them. So one thing I like to say is what we do is a one-on-one podcast, a personalized podcast about Bitcoin to the politicians. But you're really starting from sometimes zero or negative, and you have to ramp them up and get them understanding what the landscape is, what's happening around the world, because most politicians are usually engaged with something. Just like your neighbor, he's got his job, he's got kids, he's got his favorite show on Netflix he's got to watch. There's a packed schedule. And the governments have their attention split multiple ways, recently with the war in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So you can see there's a big chasm to cross to get them talking about Bitcoin. And sadly, a lot of people are not keen to plan ahead, to lay the foundation of Bitcoin adoption well in advance. The US seems to be better at it. They've created their strategic Bitcoin reserve. They've started legislation. They're moving forward, whereas other countries have yet to really get there. I mean, Japan, I think, is aiming to pass ETF approvals in 2028. So 2 years later, and 2 years in Bitcoin terms is decades.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of things to do, but we're out there, we're engaging with them. We shifted our strategy somewhat. Instead of just trying to meet the president or prime minister, we've done a number of those meetings, and they're always great photo op, great discussions, but then nothing really happens. So we've adjusted our strategy to try to undertake smaller projects with the governments, maybe their national utility or some body, to do some project that gets them their toes wet, gets them into the Bitcoin swimming pool.
It seems that there's people maybe like Vitalik who are not, I can't really see any kind of monetary or or any incentive that doesn't align with wanting the best for Ethereum.
Well, I mean, Ethereum is centralized, so Vitalik can just say, this is the state of the chain on this day. We're just going to go back, roll it back. And there's precedent for that, right? But I'm not sure. Centralized systems, the banking systems, they are centralized, but they're also very, very hard to upgrade, right? You think it's easy, but it's actually not. They don't really have a good grasp of exactly how these legacy systems work. And a lot of them are built on very old tech, too.
Yeah.
It's not like they can upgrade, whereas if we all agree quantum is a threat and there is work being done to mitigate the quantum threat, we can just upgrade. Every node on the network will upgrade. And it's your own self-preservation. Like, you as a Bitcoiner with your node will decide to upgrade because that's in your best interest to harden against this threat if it were to materialize. Whereas, the legacy system, they might try to upgrade, they might fix something and forget some subsystem. It's not as straightforward as a node on network. And yes, Bitcoin is decentralized, but for the most part, everyone is very active because our life savings is in this internet money and depends on this little node that we're running. Well, I think LATAM has a lot of organic adoption and is very ripe for nation-state level adoption. And you have precedent too with El Salvador moving ahead on that with the Bitcoin law and various initiatives. I think the US is probably still the dominant leader in terms of overall adoption.
Interesting.
If you look at the whole landscape in the US, they have the ETFs, they have the custodians, they have the corporations, and a lot of Bitcoin holders. So I would say, coupled with the legislation that they have and they're about to table, they have almost the complete package. They just have to move one step forward, and then it's difficult for any other country to really catch up to them. But there's a wide range of Bitcoin adoption everywhere. Like Africa, a lot of organic adoption. I don't think it's as ripe for nation-state level adoption simply because it's more chaotic and less stable. But I think Asia is also an important part of the equation, especially Japan, because Japan really needs Bitcoin. Like, it's got the highest debt to GDP ratio. And, there's talk of unfunded liabilities in the US, like pensions, but in Japan, even more so. But Japan has been funding essentially the world with zero interest rate, yen, cheap yen for everybody. And what that's done is drain the savings away from a lot of the people. And I just talked on stage with Batara-san about this. But there's unintended side effects to this zero interest rate policy, which is you have wealth being destroyed. Japanese savers cannot save. They'd have to invest in stocks or anything like that. You have the elderly working longer hours. I think 25% of people over 65 in Japan are working not because they feel fulfilled to do a job. They're doing it for survival.
Wow.
And also population collapse. And you don't really think Bitcoin has anything to do with this, but it does, because when you don't feel hope for the future, you don't really want to bring children into the world because it's expensive. And you have the burden, and your children have the burden to support the aging population. A lot of the pensions are paid just in time in Japan. So it's the current workforce paying immediately for these underfunded liabilities.
Yeah.
So I think Bitcoin has to have a major role in Japan, and we do see that. We see corporate adoption. This is evidence of that. Like, people are investing in Bitcoin in a simple vehicle, which is a corporate structure. And when there are ETFs, I think they will pile into that. But it opens the door to more things like pension funds investing in ETF is far more likely than pension funds buying spot Bitcoin. So I think overall, this is why Japan is very interesting for us, because it's sort of a key battleground that is not the US for Bitcoin adoption.
Right.
Well, the thing is, Bitcoin always does what no one expects it to do. And there's two things. One, I think we are down here at the 70s range just because people are fearful. They think that Bitcoin will always follow this 4-year cycle, up, up, down, up. And this is supposed to be the down year. So it's sort of like TA, technical analysis. If everyone is trading with TA, then TA works. If everyone thinks that Bitcoin will follow this 4-year cycle, and a lot of the whales seem to believe it, then it will follow it temporarily. But I don't believe that this is normal. So if you look at what's happened in this quote-unquote cycle, we had an all-time high before the halving, which is unheard of. Then we had an okay year. In 2025, we had a new all-time high. And then we finished the year in the red.
Yeah.
That's not normal.
No.
That's not the 4-year cycle. So that alone says that it is not a 4-year cycle. It's either like a really weird cycle, compressed, or it's extended, but it's uncertain at this point. But I think for permeables like myself, we see it as just a minor deviation to go up even higher. So I think if everyone thinks we're going to go lower this year, we're probably going to end up higher. And there's a lot of signs that point to us going higher, because we've never had this kind of a bearish market where a major accumulator like Strategy is taking multiples of daily mine supply off the market every week. Like their preferred shares, STRC in particular, it's working perfectly. It's letting them accumulate in a bear market and lowering their average cost. Then you have companies like Metaplanet that have raised additional capital, also in a down market, to buy more Bitcoin. And then you have more companies coming out like XXI and BSTR from Adam Back, which are also going to start buying. Like BSTR, I think they're scheduled to de-SPAC in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And they have 1.5 billion in cash to deploy. And if Bitcoin stays below 75K, they will be buying below Strategy's average cost, which would be a great blessing for Adam. And I just don't see that happening. Like that's too good to be true.
Interesting.
But even the major companies like Metaplanet and Strategy, they're able to average down right now, which is also too good to be true. So I just can't see us continuing the rest of the year where they're able to continually buy with no dilution and average down. And then we see BSTR come out and buy, 20K below Sailor's average cost. It's just not going to happen. It's too good to be true for all those guys. So I think we'll see it come back up 80, 90, back to 100, and then we'll just shoot up.
Samson Mow claims that Bitcoin isn't acting as it once did. The conventional 4-year cycle may no longer be applicable. He thinks we might be entering a period of quick omega candles or enormous price surges occurring in a relatively short amount of time, rather than lengthy periods of accumulation followed by slow rallies. In the past, Bitcoin fluctuated in tandem with halving events. Over time, demand increases, supply decreases, and prices rise. However, Mow contends that the dynamics are rapidly shifting and that most people aren't prepared for it due to increased institutional interest, nation-state acceptance, and limited supply. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more content like this.
What about quantum? This is another big topic that...
Quantum is a nothing burger. So, there is no such thing as a quantum computer right now that can do anything significant. And the discussion is really like, how far away will it take for there to be a quantum computer that can potentially do something? So right now, the quantum computers, you have to basically say, here's the answer. And then it'll go, yeah, I found the answer. So it's not like they're able to crack anything right now. They can't even, factor, 21, right? Unless you tell it, like, here's a hint.
Yeah.
And then they'll find the answer. But it's really, I think it's just FUD. People are trying to manipulate the price down and they say there's a big threat. And there's also different incentives too. Like some VCs have invested in companies that help blockchains harden against quantum computing. And they're saying, yes, it's a threat. Hire my company that I invested in to help you. Mm-hmm. So you have to look at all these different incentives across the board. But the fact is, quantum computing is not a threat, and it won't be for 10 to 20 years, if it ever is. And if it ever was, Bitcoin will be able to react far quicker than the financial system, because people like to think, well, Bitcoin, they'll just crack all the keys and everything. But I think it's more likely someone will, short the market or something and then show a vulnerability in some centralized system and take it down. I don't know if you've seen 0 Day. It's a Netflix show, but...
I think I have. I'll have to... Is it a series or a movie?
It's a series.
Okay,
it's a short series.
Okay,
but basically, hackers took down a bank.
Oh.
And they weren't sure about the balances of all the banks, so then they shut down everything, the whole financial system. But that's the problem with centralized systems, which is, how much, NVIDIA stock do you own? It's on a server somewhere, backed up somewhere else in another server that might have took a missile hit from Iran. And then, the other copy, if it's taken down, how much NVIDIA do you really own? You don't really know, right? So the attack vector I see with quantum is someone trying to cause chaos in the markets. They just attack something, knock it offline, and then it's mass chaos. It's difficult. Like we talked about, it's difficult to get anything done with the government, but I think the need for Bitcoin is definitely here. And I think if we're engaging the government and we're talking to them about what's happening elsewhere in the world, you have the treasury companies in Japan also going full steam ahead on acquiring Bitcoin. And that makes it difficult for the government to ignore Bitcoin because Metaplanet is one of the most traded stocks on the Japanese stock exchange. You cannot say Bitcoin is not important, because it definitely is, and it's staring you right in the face. You combine that with the necessity of Bitcoin for all the other reasons we talked about, I think it's just a matter of time that it kicks over, and then you see a shift in priorities and a shift in execution. We recently announced a new nonprofit that was just set up called Production Ready. It's set up by me, Jimmy Song, Parker Lewis, and John Ratcliffe. And this is to fund Bitcoin education and the development of a new Bitcoin client. So we're kind of a third faction. We're not core or knots. We just want Bitcoin to be unchanging, conservative, and work towards ossification. So less new features. We don't want to fight anybody. We see there's value in the core project and development concentration there. We see value in the knots community pushing for anti-spam, but I think our approach is different. We think we're going to focus on funding a new client that's just going to be battle hardened, security hardened, and it's just, Bitcoin as money.
Samson Mow is basically explaining why Bitcoin works very differently from both traditional financial systems and other cryptocurrencies like Ethereum, and why that difference really matters for the future. He points out that systems like Ethereum or traditional banking are more centralized, meaning a small group of people can make big decisions, like reversing transactions or changing how the system works. That might sound efficient, but in reality, it can also make those systems harder to manage and upgrade over time, especially because they're built on old, complicated technology. By contrast, Bitcoin is decentralized, so no single person is in control. If there's a serious threat, like the possibility of quantum computing breaking security, Bitcoin can adapt because users themselves choose to update their software. People are motivated to protect the network since their own money depends on it. Mow then shifts to talking about governments and why Bitcoin adoption is slow. He explains that working with politicians is a lot like convincing a regular person to learn about Bitcoin. Many of them either don't understand it or already have negative assumptions. On top of that, they're busy dealing with other major issues, so Bitcoin isn't always a priority. That's why adoption is uneven. Some countries are moving forward, while others are still far behind. Instead of just aiming for big meetings with world leaders, Mow says his strategy has changed to starting small, working on practical projects that slowly introduce governments to Bitcoin. If you find value in this content, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this.